Welcome, 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 one and all. We're going to go ahead and get started. This is our October office hours. You can find the dates for the office hours on the webpage. So please make sure you save the date. And because we always have really great things, we work really hard on the agenda to make sure it's things that you can find valuable. Glad that you all could make it. I'm Dr. Hartwell, our fearless office director, Lilito Monsager, and our team, Faye Colley, Ronnie Evans, Beverly Flythe, and Dr. Kim Howard. And we are jazzed, as I said earlier, to work with you for about an hour this afternoon on office hours. So, of course, you're all pros, but just to let you know, to orient you to the controls, if you hover in the center of your screen, you're going to see the 3 lines for your chat box, but you've already found that, obviously. Please put your name, your district, and answer the question on the main page here. But keep that chat box open. If you'd like to speak, go ahead and click on the mic icon. However, if you're not speaking, we ask that you mute yourself so that we won't hear the crosstalk. But if you want to ask a question that's on something we're presenting, please go ahead and hop on the mic. And if you're hopping on the mic to speak, we'd also like to see your lovely and handsome face. So please go ahead and click on the camera icon for that. You can share your reactions by, thumbs up, thumbs down to a post or to a question. You can also click on the hand icon to raise your hand, and we will stop at an appropriate time during the presentation to make sure that we answer all of your questions. We do have some time built in within the presentation, as well as at the end to answer any questions if we're not able to stop right in the middle. Okay, so on the next slide, you're going to find our agenda. So we've gone through the welcome. We're going to provide some reflections throughout the day. You're going to talk about ADEPT reminders today. You're going to hear a little bit more and experience something interactive in terms of virtual observations. We're going to share with you some updates around sclead.org, some special area reminders, and finally answer some questions that have been coming in from your colleagues in the field as we go closer to the end of the training. So you're going to hear some FAQs that may not be ones that you've asked, but perhaps things that you've been muddling over. I guarantee you somebody else out there has had the same question. So we're going to share some of those FAQs near the end of the webinar today. On the next slide, we're going to jump straight into the agenda with the ADEPT reminders. The first ADEPT reminder we want is to bring your attention back to our standard effectiveness calendar. So we know that you have a lot going on in your districts right now. We know that you guys and girls are super busy, but we just wanted to remind you of some things that should be on your radar at this time of the school year. These things should be on your radar for most of the fall and, of course, into the winter. You want to make sure that in SCLead, if you're using SCLead to track your evaluation process or wherever you're tracking it, you want to make sure that you have those preliminary evaluation pre-conferences, observations, and post-conferences. They should be starting, if not well underway. We know that many of you had later start dates than normal. When we look in SCLead right now, we see a lot of blank observation bubbles, and that would be under the districts and schools page. If you look, or if you click on the evaluations page, a lot of blank bubbles. So we know you had a late start, but going into the end of October, certainly into November, certainly into December, you should start to see those observation bubbles, if you're using SCLead, start to fill in. We know that we've seen some progress in the system with the SLOs, so we know you're having the preliminary conferences, but we do not want you to lose sight that those observations and the pre-conference, the POP cycle, the pre-conference observation and post-conferences should be happening now. And also keep, for those ADEPT leads that are new, remember that the minimum number of required observations is, of course, defined by the contract level. You should also be conducting some SCTS evaluator trainings as needed. Most of the districts, if not all of the districts, have folks that have been trained as a trainer. We just finished a state level 3-day training last week, and we have a train the trainer starting tomorrow for Thursday and Friday. But you have folks in your district who can offer that 3-day SCTS training when you have new hires in your district if you miss one of the state level trainings. So we want to encourage you to plan those at the local level. You can also partner with your ADEPT consortia to offer trainings, or maybe a nearby district. But as you need those through the fall and into the winter, make sure that you are conducting those as needed. And of course, as you get new hires, we want to make sure that if you're using SC Lead or whatever your system is, that you're orienting your new employees to the functionalities and requirements in SC Lead. So on the next slide, here we want to talk about any updates to the ADEPT plan. We know that based on some of the feedback that we've already gotten from some districts, we've already gotten some changes and updates from some of you. Just want to remind you that if the district needs to change the dates in the ADEPT plan, specifically around the evaluation timeline, please make sure you contact your regional ADEPT support person as soon as possible. We know that revisions may be needed. They may be needed if there's a hurricane, any kind of inclement weather, or any kind of calendar updates that may be a part of the due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So just want to make sure that as soon as you know that those revisions in your ADEPT timeline, whether it's when your cycle is going to begin or end, we want to make sure that you let us know those as soon as possible. Those evaluation timelines do need to be accurate because your ADEPT plans are FOIable, and we often get requests throughout the year for copies of ADEPT plans. So we want to make sure that they're accurate. So please let us know. You want to contact your individual ADEPT liaison if you do have any changes needed to your ADEPT plan. Your ADEPT plan should be locked, but we can go in and facilitate those updates. So just let us know. All right, I'm going to go ahead and quickly turn it over to my colleague, Rodney Evans, who's going to take us through some more ADEPT updates. Rodney?
All right, thank you, Julie. Good afternoon, everyone. Here are reminders from our office for the flexibility provisions for educator evaluations for the current school year. Again, observations and conferences may take place in a virtual or face-to-face setting. For observation cycles, the suggested timelines between pre-conferences, observations, and post-conferences are still recommended. Districts and schools have the ability to extend those timelines as needed. Video observations of instruction may be used for evaluation purposes if the video can capture both teacher and student voices. For observations in virtual and face-to-face settings, the teacher should continue to make student work, lesson plans, and other asynchronous support resources available to the observer. For annual and continuing contract teachers, our office encourages districts and schools to continue the practice of unannounced observations in the final cycle, but we also offer you guys the flexibility to conduct announced observations where necessary due to teacher schedules. There are no changes, again, to the composition of evaluation teams. For annual and continuing summative and annual formative evaluations, observers will conduct all required preliminary evaluation cycle observations. The South Carolina Department of Education encourages districts to conduct all required evaluation cycle observations, but the flexibility is provided to allow districts to mark evaluations met or not met, even if only one observation is conducted in the final cycle. For induction formative evaluations, districts must either conduct a preliminary cycle observation or a walkthrough and post-conference focused on specific SCTS standards and indicators. This flexibility will allow districts to support new teachers with specific practices, especially if they will be teaching in a virtual environment for the first time. Any full observations will be used for scoring. For continuing formative evaluations, districts are still required to conduct one observation in the preliminary cycle, and the final cycle may be waived for all teachers. All right, here's the flexibility review for the SLO process. All teachers will complete the simplified SLO if they meet the business rules. All right. The simplified SLO focuses on 1 to 2 high priority standards and 1 instructional strategy. Okay. SLO creation, monitoring, and mid-year check-ins can be folded into data team structures or PLCs. Something that someone asked about may have been the last office hours, or in between there may have been just something someone asked from the districts. So sclead.org does have the option for the teacher and the evaluator to sign if that is a desired action by the school or district. If you guys are incorporating or folding in those major conferences, again, with those school-wide meetings, such as the PLC and grade level meetings. All right. So again, that is a working action in SC Lead. Okay. SLO business rules still apply for teachers and students. So for teachers who have changing rosters, all right, the business rules for SLOs already state that teachers should have the flexibility to drop students from the SLO based on their roster. So students must be present for 75% of the academic school year to be included in the SLO. In the event that the educator's student roster changes significantly, the educator and the evaluator can adjust the SLO based on these changes during the mid-course conference. Thing is, the changes must be documented. Okay. All right, so that's what we have as far as our flexibility guidelines for the current school year. All right, who's next?
It's me, Rodney. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And I just want to come on the mic first and say thank you to all of you. It is always, if you work in HR or you work in instruction, you're always thinking about how to make sure teachers are physically and emotionally safe and healthy so that students can be physically and emotionally safe and healthy. But that job has so many more layers to it this year than it has in any other year. And we know that that sits on your shoulders a lot of times, and that the glory for making those decisions and enforcing those decisions often sits with you to explain and sit with people as they are sitting in their anxiety. So just thank you. We know how tirelessly you've been working and that you might be spread thin. So we want to say thank you for that. And it really is a joy to see your names pop up in the chat and be together. The other thing is we really value these times every month, not just to share with you what's on our mind, but to hear from you. So if there are things you need so that you can better support your students and your families and your communities and your teachers, please let us know. This section of the agenda was really put here because most of the questions we're getting from you are about virtual observations and observing teachers who are teaching virtually who may not have been prepared to teach that way. A lot of you know, I know how to run a DEP like the back of my hand. It's a normal year, but this year is different. How do I make sure that it's fair? So we have 3 different sets of strategies that we want to share with you. And the first is just opening up our mind to the sources of evidence in a DEP. So just like good teaching is good teaching, whether you're teaching online or teaching in a classroom, good evaluation is good evaluation, but your evaluators probably need a different set of tools and tricks to use to gather this same information. So with lesson plans, it may be they're using a regular lesson plan collection system that they used to have, but there may be extra layers to it if you have some teachers who are hybrid or teaching virtually, and you may want to consider some of the other things on this list, like their course website, student-facing planning tools. There are a number of things where you can see evidence of teachers planning beyond just those plans. For observations, similarly, you have the option to record them now and use a recorded observation, or to do them in person, or to pop into a live session like we're doing now, to be there. And you may have some teachers who are on a hybrid schedule who actually aren't teaching synchronously. They're teaching more asynchronously. And so thinking about gathering that evidence of what they've been teaching is going to take a conversation with the teacher in a way that just down to room 108 and popping in for fifth period might not have needed quite as much negotiation. So make sure your evaluators are thinking through those logistics. As far as reflections, you'll always have the reflection inside of the SC lead, but your evaluators may want to be proactive before the post-conference to pull in some information from the SLO as they normally would, or ask some specific questions to the teacher, especially if they're learning how to capture evidence of the standards. They want to give the teacher as much credit as possible. So maybe reaching out to ask some clarifying questions before that post-conference could make sense. And there may be other forms of teacher surveys or teacher reflections or student surveys of learning that you're doing as a part of moving to a new modality for your district. Feel free to use those as information about teacher practice as well. Similarly, the professional review, I've had some good conversations with districts about who should do professionalism this year. What if I have teachers who are assigned to a building, but they're teaching in our virtual program and they're being supervised by someone else? Well, the person who should do professionalism is someone who is working with the teacher regularly this year and has knowledge of their professionalism this year. So that may or may not be their principal, depending on how you've structured your virtual program and that teacher is teaching virtually. And then finally, for the SLO and for student work and reflections, you want to make sure that focus is really important when you're working with teachers this year. So not spreading them out to think about too many things. So thinking about really focusing those SLOs on work they're already doing, maybe to change their curriculum to a different format this year, or a virtual strategy for feedback that is really important that your district is setting as an expectation. Similarly, for student work, you may want to think about the regular ways teachers might bring student work before a post-conference, but you may also be able to peek into your learning management system, or to use other ways of questioning students in the chat, even during a live session. So just your evaluators are going to have to use some different tools. We'd encourage you to give them that flexibility to gather as much evidence of what teachers are doing right. On the next slide, Rodney, the second set of strategies that we wanted to offer to you is actually directly from some experts. So Rodney, if you wouldn't mind unsharing, I will share my screen. I was so lucky at the end of September, in anticipation of this office hours, to have a great conversation with Katea Clark and Yasmin McClinton, who are two of the instructional leaders in the virtual SC program. And they have been living virtual evaluation and observation for years. This is what they do. This is part of their regular practice. And so this is a little bit of a longer interview. It's about 9 minutes long. I'm not going to play all 9 minutes for you. We'll probably do just about 6 here together. And as soon as I get permission from Yasmin and Katea, I'll share a link to this with you that you can share with your instructional leaders. But I think they have some really great practical advice for us. So I'm going to put this on and just ask Rodney to wave to me if you can hear the sound. The only other thing I'll tell you is we had some bandwidth issues during the interview, so you won't see mouths moving, but you should be able to hear the sound.
No sound, Lila.
Well, let's try that again, friends. Sometimes it works right the first time, and sometimes it doesn't, even when you practice it. All right.
Faye, while we're waiting on the video to queue up, were there any questions or anything that we can answer while we're waiting on the video?
Yes, so Lila asked earlier if there could be feedback on the simplified SLO, and Patricia Canada put in the chat that the simplified SLO doesn't provide for a final results. So how can teachers receive a rating for the SLO? So if anybody on our team can jump in on that.
And if the video comes up, we will hold that question until we have a certified break.
Yeah, I can't answer that question and pull this up, guys. So I need y'all to field that if it's okay. I'm going to try one more time. And if it doesn't, we'll just move on with slides.
And Lila, if you need me as backup, I have pulled that video up and I can.
All right, Patricia, let's see. This one doesn't provide a final result. So how can teachers?
Katia Clark, and I am the high school.
Can y'all hear the sound?
Yes.
Okay, I'll hold off. Rodney, do you want to read the question one more time and then we'll jump into this?
Yeah, the question. The simplified SLO doesn't provide for a final result. So how can teachers receive a rating for the SLO?
That's a really great question, and one that we've definitely fielded before and tried to model inside of the sample SLOs that are on the website. So I'd encourage you to look at those. The conversation at the beginning of the year really has to be clear around the teacher providing evidence of what growth will look like. So it's very likely in a lot of your SLOs this year, instead of focusing on one post-assessment, the teachers are going to give you a list of different types of formative and summative assessments that could show growth on those standards. And so they need to be able to provide evidence of that, and that's how you would decide if the teacher met those targets. So it's really about zooming in on those targets that are set by the teacher versus having something that's more across the board for every student on a single assessment. So we did want to give teachers flexibility because we know assessment is going to look so varied and rosters are going to be so varied for teachers this year that we wanted to make sure that conversation about growth was really local. And there is a rubric, an updated rubric with the SLOs that provides for some guidance there as well. But great question. Okay, I'm going to go ahead with the video, not to waste any more time. Thanks for y'all's patience.
Instruction team leader for Virtual SC. I work with and lead and supervise all of our high school teachers and our instructional support staff. And in my role, I'm really responsible for evaluating our teachers, especially our full-time teachers, but also, evaluating all of our teachers and making sure that our other teacher leaders are equipped with what they need to perform their jobs. So
I'm Yasmin McClinton. I am one of the instructional coaches here at Virtual SC. I work with the teachers on a one-on-one or team basis with a focus on incorporating instructional strategies and providing student support in a virtual setting.
So I feel like a good starting point for anyone observing, and definitely is a good starting point for us, are those teaching standards. Quality feedback is one that we're really looking for. It's important no matter where you're observing teachers, but especially in a virtual setting, because that's one of the main ways that we are really communicating with students. And if we're not giving them that deep and quality feedback and feedback that helps them stretch and grow and understand, where some of those struggles were in completing an assignment, then we are we're not reaching them, and it gets a little bit easier for them to disconnect from us, I think, if we're not doing that. And reaching out and saying, hey, I know that in such and such a test or on such and such a quiz, you did not perform well. Let's talk about what some of the problems might have been. This teacher is very proactive in doing that work.
Mm-hmm. And I know another teacher who utilizes like the Google Docs and has like when the students are writing an essay or whatever, the feedback is continual, and so the student will, you know, do whatever they're going to do on the page, and the teacher is giving that direct feedback on the comments, and the student is fixing those errors and also commenting back, and so they're having a conversation, though it's not like on the phone or in texting, but with their actual work. So the student is getting that real-time feedback. And then we have, you know, teachers who are providing feedback using video, and so they'll video record themselves as they're grading the students' work, and the students really love that.
Going into this, are going to need a little more support, and we'll need a closer look at what they're doing, just because, I mean, it may be a newer teacher, or it may be a teacher who struggled recently. So we come up with a list for every one of our teams of, okay, who's top priority. Our new teachers go up there, but then in addition, we do have some teachers who've had some struggles that we put on that.
We call them the coaching cycle. So we have cycles because we can't help all the teachers on a deeper level every semester. So we kind of rotate them out, new teachers, and then those teachers that need a little bit more tender care. So those teachers that are on our cycle, then we are connecting with them via email and then through Teams, always messaging with them. We set up a time with them that they are going to have a conversation with us, and we give them the opportunity to, we give them like maybe a 2-week time period, and in that 2-week they'll choose the time that they want to meet. And prior to meeting, we ask them to, we have assess your learning survey that we put into all of our courses. So and a survey to students, so the students assessing how they feel that they're how they're.
So I'll cut it off there since we're having some trouble with the visual. What I'll say is what Yasmin goes on to say is that students do an assessing their own learning survey where they talk about if they have reached out for help in the past week, if they feel comfortable getting help from their teacher, why they haven't asked questions. Is that something about their own learning, or is that something about their comfort level with the teacher? And especially in virtual sessions where they may not have live sessions often, that's been really, really helpful for them. And what Katea goes on to say is that those surveys really take the place of, if you were in a brick and mortar setting, being able to go around and tap the shoulder of a student and just ask them about their learning. So they've been creative about those ways. And I do apologize about the visual. As soon as I have permission from Katea and Yasmin, we're happy to share this entire interview with you if it's something that you think would be helpful for you to share with instructional leaders, because they really are a font of wisdom about different strategies. Just one other strategy that they shared that I thought I just wanted to highlight was being able to work with teachers for them to give video feedback to students and actually do a walkthrough, like a video recording of themselves as they are giving students feedback on their work. And I just thought, what a powerful way to do a think aloud, but a think aloud that's really personalized to that student about their work. We're going to go ahead and head to the next slide about virtual observations. I think we have a couple, and then we'll stop for other questions about the SLO or virtual observations. The last resource I want to point you to is just that NIET report, which we've been sharing since it was released in the spring. One of the most important indicators we think you could look at with your instructional leaders, with your evaluators, is that academic feedback indicator. We just want to remind you this tool is really organized for conversation and teaching, not for evaluation. So you will see the performance descriptors at the exemplary level copied there for you. But what you see in the next column, the virtual learning strategies, there isn't an expectation that you would see all of those at exemplary. They're just examples like we do in training with the rubric of what something looks like or sounds like. Similarly, those additional synchronous considerations, if you're walking into a live lesson and observing that online, you wouldn't necessarily expect to see those specific strategies, but they're just clear examples for you. And I would ask you that if you are not on mute, if you could put yourself on mute unless you want to come on the mic and ask a question, that would be great. The other thing we wanted to draw your attention to is just that there have been additional trainings added by NIET specifically for teachers this fall. So if you need to get more teachers signed up, we definitely have room, and we can drop that link into the chat for you. You can also contact NIET directly if you have people that you still want to be trained. Those sessions take you through specific descriptors in that companion, that virtual companion to the rubric, and give some examples. I think some of the most powerful learning in those sessions comes inside the chat where teachers and principals you could easily use with instructional leaders in your context. So I'll pause there. I think that's our last slide on observations and instruction, and just ask Faye if there are any questions that she wants to address.
Thanks, Lila. Danny just put in the chat just now about they have had high interest, but the sessions are full. Are there any more sessions for the NIET trainings?
So that's the link that is here. There was a memo that went out from the Office of College and Career Readiness, or the Division of College and Career Readiness, I believe last week. And so if they followed that link, which we can put into the chat for them, there is more space this fall.
Thanks, Lila. I dropped in that link in the chat, both for the additional NIET trainings and companion rubric.
Great. And then I see a question from Anita, and I appreciate you asking for clarity. Yes, districts are still allowed to use their own district-developed SLO rubric as long as that's in your ADEPT plan. So you do not have to use the rubric that accompanies the simplified SLO, but we do think the rubric that accompanies the simplified SLO can answer some of those questions that, like the ones Dr. Canada is getting from her evaluators.
And Lila, another FAQ is, well, just a reminder that this virtual companion rubric does not replace the SCTS 4.0 rubric. This is a support piece that kind of fleshes out how the indicator might look in a virtual environment, but it does not replace the SCTS rubric. That is still our main evaluation tool.
Yes, thank you so much for clarifying that, Julie. And I know it is, because it looks just like the rubric, it has the same descriptors in planning, environment, and instruction. We don't want there to be confusion. So thank you. Rodney, if you'll hit us with the next slide. We just wanted to clear up a couple things with SC Lead. On the left, you'll see a screenshot. You probably noticed if you've been in the professional learning library in the past couple weeks, that there is an extra step when you're trying to play a video where when you click play, you'll see the screen pop up and it'll say, please click here to view the live video. If you do that, as it did usually, a new link will pop up in a new tab. And that was really Randa's pretty elegant way to get around the fact that that video library is coded in Flash. And so we just needed an extra step for it to be able to pop up for people. So if you've seen that, you're seeing it correctly, and you should still have access to all of the professional learning videos. The other thing we just wanted to acknowledge very honestly is that we know PCS has opened up later. The new SC Educator that is replacing PCS opened up later than any of us expected. We have been working with Randa and Mainstream, the designers of that new SC Educator system, over the course of last week and this weekend to do some final testing. We just were not comfortable pushing out anything that would change your staff listings drastically from what you have entered into PCS, SC Educator, and SC Lead. We needed to make sure those things would match. We do expect that tomorrow, and then Friday at the latest, but we're expecting tomorrow, you should see SC Lead reflect the changes that your district has made if you've used the new PCS system in SC Educator. We also expect that you should not see any duplicates happen if you have added staff using the manual SC Lead function, unless you have someone staffed in a different position. So if you added them in an assistant principal position, but the person in PCS added them in an instructional coach position, you are going to see that person show up twice, because SC Lead's not going to know which one of those is accurate. But other than that, if the position codes match up, the names match up, CIDs match up, you should see the correct staffing list coming to you, crossing our fingers, hopefully tomorrow. So just wanted to give you those updates. And I believe Beverly is up next for the special areas.
Thanks, Lila. Hi, everyone. Our OEELD team just wrapped up our first round of special areas trainings for the fall and summer. During this round of training, the goal was to prepare those districts piloting the Special Areas 2020 with trained special areas managers who were then qualified to assign and support evaluators in Moodle. Even if you are waiting to fully implement in 21-22, you don't have to wait until the summertime to start prepping your evaluators. Your district can get a jump on next year's evaluations by assigning your special areas manager and getting them registered for the next Special Areas Train the Trainer early this spring. The sooner your special areas manager gets trained through our Train the Trainer, the sooner they will have access to the materials and the process for assigning evaluators to training. Rather than this being one more task for them to accomplish over the summer, you may want to go ahead and get a jump on it this spring. We're currently scheduling our spring round of training to begin in January. Those dates for our spring training sessions will be communicated with you via upcoming OEELD newsletters and office hours, as well as posted on the website with links to the FormStack registrations. If you have not already identified your special areas manager for your district, please reach out to me directly at my email address to do so as soon as possible. Next slide, Rodney. For administrative purposes in Moodle, there can be only one special areas manager, that is. We give rights to one district assigned special areas manager, who in turn has the role of assigning your district to the self-paced training they need in order to be assigned to evaluation teams for your special areas educators. Once your district adept coordinator assigns a special areas manager, then the special areas manager, or SAM, will attend the Special Areas Train the Trainer and receive access to the Google folder, which contains step-by-step instructions for assigning evaluator training to those within your district who will serve as your evaluators. The Google folder for the SAM also contains an Excel spreadsheet for submitting the list of trained evaluators to Dr. Kim Howard, who will then assign those trained evaluators their credentials in SC Lead. Only trained evaluators with the appropriate credentials in sclead.org will be assigned or can be assigned to evaluation teams for special areas educators undergoing formative or summative evaluations in SC Lead. If you have any questions whatsoever about special areas training, special areas managers assignments, evaluator training, or anything else about the special areas training, please feel free to reach out to me and I will provide you assistance as soon as possible. Thanks so much for joining us today, and I'll be back in the chat if anybody needs me.
All right, so good afternoon. At this time, we're just going to share with you some of the questions we've gotten frequently here lately and some answers to those questions. All right, so our first question you see here, is there an evaluation model for school psychologists? At this time, school psychologists are not required to have an adept evaluation. Your district, however, can elect to offer a locally developed evaluation if you see fit. SCDE met with an advisory team in 2019, and we discussed the model for school psychologist evaluations. It was determined that this process needed to wait until the new national standards were finalized. And the National Association of School Psychologists have released those, and they will go into effect nationally in 2024. So we'll see some progress with this at that time. Okay, our next question. Rodney? Rodney, you can go to the next question.
Yeah. Can you see it?
No.
EBE?
I think a Halloween ghost is visiting our teams today, is what I think, Rodney. There it goes.
All right, here we go.
Okay.
So this question we've gotten several times. Who can serve as a GBE approver for those educators on the 2020 Special Areas Evaluation? So in sclead.org, all educators in that school or those who are staffed at the district level will populate as options for the Student Growth and Professional Goals Approver. Just as with the SLOs, the GBE approver is not required to have the evaluator credential, but that person should be familiar with that content area and the expectations of that evaluation so that he or she could provide adequate feedback to that educator. So no, they are not required to be credentialed as an evaluator, but they should have that necessary content background in order to give feedback as a GBE approver. Okay, and we have one more question that we want to share with you. And that question is, what does the ADEPT look like for PCS position code 12? And position code 12 includes those school-based non-administrative personnel who work with classroom teachers in an instructional or curriculum coordinator capacity, or any other school-based personnel not requiring principal or administrative supervisory certification. So examples of those people would be curriculum and instructional facilitators, your curriculum specialists. For those educators, you want to be sure to enter the position title in the notes field. Most of them would be on a continuing contract, so GBE evaluations would be appropriate since they're non-classroom based, excuse me. In the case of induction or annual contract educators who require a formative or summative evaluation, you'll need to think through those observations carefully, and they may need to essentially borrow a classroom for the purposes of evaluation if they are required to be observed in practice. So just think through those, but most of them will be on those GBE contracts. Okay, and those are our FAQs. What we want to do now is open the floor to you for your questions, and I'll pass the mic back to Julie as we wrap things up. So if you have any questions, you can hop on the mic or you can use the chat, and we'll do our best to get you those answers quickly.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. I think we have control of our technology now, so that's great. And thank y'all for hanging in there with us. So do you have any questions about the ADEPT updates or any questions about the virtual observations and the virtual resources that Lila shared? Any questions about special areas in general or the special areas manager for Beverly? Or any questions about the FAQs for Kim? And please feel free to jump on the mic or put your question in the chat box. Faye, are there any questions that we have missed in the chat that we need to address?
I didn't see anything, and thanks for catching that question earlier, Lila, from Anita. I just wanted to bring back to everyone what Lila shared earlier about gathering feedback for those that are already going through the Moodle training. How is it going so far? Feedback on the SLO simplified form. So if anybody, wants to give feedback on those, and if you have questions outside of what we have presented today, so please feel free to hop on the mic or put that in the chat.
Adrian, you have your hand in the chat.
Yes, I do. I'm concerned about having only one district manager for special areas because we have such a large district. So is there any possibility that larger districts such as Charleston will be able to send more than one person to the training?
I will
Adrian,
toss that. Go ahead. Thank you, Lila.
Sure, no problem. I was just going to say, Adrian, you can send more folks to that trainer training, and we want as many people from your district that want to have that information as possible. The issue with having more than one person having assigning rights in Moodle, we think is a technical one right now. So we'll take that feedback and check on it. But that's why we've had one point of contact for districts right now, just because that signing people up for virtual training feature. But we do understand that you'll have a lot of evaluators to get through, so we can check on that. I just asked Beverly, I know we talked about this earlier in the week. Was that, did I miss anything in that answer?
Nope, that was exactly what I was going to hop on and tell her.
Okay.
She can send as many folks as she wants to trainer training to get that information and to help support. But for organization purposes, it's my understanding is the reason why we can only have one special area manager per district. But I'm happy to take that back to my Moodle guru and find out more.
All right, we also have Angelia's hand up, so you are welcome to hop on the mic.
Hey, I had put it in the chat. In the simplified SLO platform form, it talks about the Rally analytics a couple of times. What is that?
Rodney and Julie, do y'all want to answer since you've been in so many design meetings, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I mean, I can give us insight on that. Rally is a program. We partnered with a group this year, and it's a program that allows schools and teachers and principals to track data for students in relationship to statewide assessments, district assessments, informal assessments, being able to track where students would have been had we not had the COVID-19 pandemic, being able to measure their actual progress to where that progress could have been. I'm trying to think of a tool or a site that you may be familiar with.
It's really the replacement for, we used to use EVOS growth measures, and so this is the new value-added measure for South Carolina.
Ah, gotcha.
But it's super cool. Like the old EVOS site had a lot of good information, but also had some issues. And what I love about the Rally tool, if your district has signed up and started using it, is there's so many teacher-friendly functions, and those projection tools for students and the ability to divide by subgroup is just really, really powerful.
Lila, are there any districts on the line? Is there anybody out there who is currently using the Rally tool?
That's a great question, Julie. Anybody out there signed up and signed in with Rally and want to give your feedback?
Another useful piece of the Rally tool, just in case we don't have anybody who's currently using it, because it is in use around the state. So if you are interested in seeing that projection data, I think it would be very helpful in terms of PLCs. It also would be helpful perhaps if you were doing everybody on a particular grade level, perhaps using a similar assessment for your SLO. It is very user-friendly in the sense that you get an at-a-glance of if my student performed this on the MAP assessment or the STAR assessment, this is where their performance is projected to be, say, at the end of the school year, and then you'll be able to track where they actually ended up at the end of the school year, and perhaps the difference between what they were projected to do and what they actually did could inform everything from grade level assignments, teacher professional development, or it may even feed some discussions around staffing in general. So it really is a lovely tool. It's data rich, it's user friendly, and as Lola said, you can sort by class, but you really do get the sense of where my students are projected to be based on their prior performance, and then you can make some decisions at the end of the year based on where they actually fell in terms of performance. So just want to give you that little summary. Thanks, Lola. If you need to go at this time, we are going to stick around and answer any questions. And I know sometimes I just like to listen to the questions because it may not be something I was thinking about, but it is an issue I've been facing. So you're welcome to stick around with us as we get some more questions in the chat box.
Sharon has a great one that I know you guys are already working on, so I'll just put it on the mic for us. We're loving the ability to train online for special areas evaluations, but we're wondering about that orientation that needs to happen for special educators to their new evaluation tool. When might something be available, or is that something that districts need to develop on their own?
Well, I'll take that one if you want me to.
Thanks, Beverly.
Initially in special areas trainer training, we had asked you all to create your own. And so we have worked on that premise, especially for the pilot districts, to go ahead and create their own orientation. But we are currently, as a team at an office, working on proposed PowerPoint presentations that you can use as your orientation for your district. And I would expect, I think our timeline is November. So if you stay tuned, we should have those available later this winter. Did I answer that correctly, Lila?
You did a beautiful job, Beverly. That's exactly right. Next month for office hours, we're going to get those together. And there's no expectation you spend a whole day training those special area educators. It'll be an overview and orientation and some tools that you can adapt either to train your induction folks this year just to get them ready or to do those orientations at the beginning of next year.
All right, we have Cheryl Warren up next. She has her hand up.
Yes, I want to thank everyone, the whole team, for your leadership. I'm one that will ask a lot of questions, but I want to give a shout out to the videos. They have really helped me. I took and I emailed them to my also when teachers are trying to register into SC Lead, I just emailed them one of those videos or that video, and it solved a lot of problems for me. So thank you for the whole team for your leadership.
Thank you, Dr. Warren. We appreciate you. We enjoy hearing those wonderful comments. We appreciate it. Everyone, if you could pay attention, if you have other questions about Rally, Lila has dropped in the chat offering herself as a contact for Rally, and also Daniel Relea. You'll see his email address, draylea@ed.sc.gov, if you want more information on the Rally tool. Any other questions out there?
I may have missed it out earlier from Cheryl Sniker regarding the PCS code 12. Are those people required to do the 5-year formative evaluation, or will they always be on GBE?
That's a great question. If they're certified and there's a way to get them a classroom, it would be preferable to give them that feedback on their teaching practice. But if they're, because 12 encompasses such a big thing, they may be curriculum specialists. Those may be folks who easily have access to a classroom to teach some of that curriculum. In some districts, they really may not, and they may be at district office and they don't have access to a group of students. So that really depends on if they're appropriate a group of students to observe them with. But we would the thing about that continuing formative is it gives a teacher a chance to get feedback on how she's doing. So there's some gray area there, Cheryl, and we trust your judgment. If they're in a position where it works, go for it. And if they're in a position where it's too much of a stretch, then we would understand them just sticking with GBE.
And there's just a short question from Erin, and I responded in the chat as well. She's wondering if she could download this session, these virtual office hours, and we are recording and we'll make it available to you as soon as possible.
This was not a question, this was more of a comment that, and this was from a little earlier in the chat, that counselors and librarians would love samples of the SGG and the plans. And I'm sure this is in reference to the special areas.
We would too. So pilot districts, please feel free to let us know if you're willing to share those. We can always draft up a sample, but it's so much more authentic when it comes from an actual practicing counselor or librarian or speech language professional.
And Lila, I would also say that there are some samples of the SGG for school counselors on the ASCA website. It's a little tweaked for South Carolina, but not enough to make a sizable difference that you could definitely use that as a template or a guide for creating your own. So those are the source documents for what we used in the evaluation model for South Carolina. So definitely check your national standards for samples of those documents.
Gina Jenkins asked a question, is there a cost associated with hosting an NIET virtual training? Gina, do you mean where NIET is the presenter, or do you mean just a standalone SCTS training, only doing it virtually? Just need a little more feedback about your question if you could hop on the mic.
The sessions hosted by the State Department that we sent the links out for are free. But if you contract with NIET, you would need to pay them.
Thank you, Lila.
Angie, are you trying to ask clarification of which videos from the ones that Dr. Cheryl Warren was being thankful for? Is that what the question is? And I'm sorry, I think some of my messages are coming in late as well.
Yes.
Dr. Warren, if you could elaborate which of our resources have been the most helpful to you. I was thinking it may be from some of our trainings, but please share which of the videos have been most helpful that Angie could utilize as well and share with her educators.
Dr. Julie Hardwell sent to us some videos, and in that, I thank you, Ms. Corley, I think you are the one that created them, and it's how to log in or register into SC Lead, and also it walked us through how to train a principal to go into SC Lead and set up observations. Those are the two that have been very helpful to me.
All right, I think that may have been from our Train the Trainer training, and one of the video clips was a walkthrough of the SC Lead and the NIET portal. Thank you.
Gotcha.
All right, so
the SC Lead link about, like, if you wanted to send to a new employee, you know, we told you that was one of the things you need to kind of keep on your radar as you get new employees throughout the fall. That video is actually like a series of PowerPoint slides. It is available in the help resources, I believe. And if not, we will make it available to you if you'll just email us, Daniel, if you need one of those, we can email it to you. The link to it.
There's a question about, has anyone developed any type of scoring rubric for GBE evaluations in SC Lead?
It's not inside of the SC Lead, but I know a lot of districts have different GBE rubrics that they use. Inside of SC Lead, the only options for GBE are like the educator went above and beyond the goal, the educator met the goal, but would love to hear some districts hop in the chat or on the mic if you give any instruction as far as how to calibrate for GBEs to your evaluators.
I'm not sure if this the comment that Daniel put in ties with the question earlier about the PowerPoint presentations for special areas. He did say that they would appreciate a self-paced training for those standards. I'm not sure if you're trying to compare that to our current self-paced training for the SCTS 4.0 rubric that's available in the portal, but we are, as mentioned earlier, preparing some PowerPoint presentations for or your use at different orientations.
And Faye, just wanted to circle back and open up the floor for someone to jump on the mic and, as Lila mentioned, to share feedback on if they've developed a scoring rubric to help kind of calibrate their GBE evaluations. And I'm assuming that would be if it was a GBE that was using something in addition to the SLO. Can anybody jump on the mic and talk a little bit about what they do as a district, or type in the chat? Thank you, Lila. Lila has also put some feedback in the chat. Dr. Warren, Lila has put some feedback in the chat for your reference.
I do know we have some of our bigger districts in particular that get very specific about like what GBEs look like for certain positions, for their school psychologists, you know, for all kinds of positions, even ones where a depth isn't required. So if you are from one of those districts and would be willing to share, please feel free to let us know. Or if you're looking for that kind of specificity, that's the next step for your evaluation system. Definitely let your regional lead know, and we can hook you up with someone who's taken that approach.
I'm thinking about doing that for our school district, and I certainly don't want to reinvent the wheel. And so I was concentrating more on the SLOs, but now I'm looking more to the GBEs and to provide my principals with guidance on that and to be consistent across the district. And that is why I asked that question.
We can look back in depth plans, Dr. Warren. I know we have, and I just can't remember off the top of my head because the team read the adept plans this year, and I did not get feedback on any, but I know we have some districts that are very, very specific about a number of GBEs. So that's something we can research for you.
Right.
Hi, Danny. Are you just sharing this comment about the GBE mid-conference?
Yeah, I just noticed it wasn't on the, hi y'all, appreciate you guys. I just noticed it wasn't on the, that report, and I'm sort of training my schools to use that report, and there's not a column for that mid-conference on the GBE. It's not a big deal, but it's just not there.
The reason is because it's not required, Daniel. It's a feature. The mid-course conference for the GBE is certainly a best practice, and adding the signatures was a feature we added after a lot of districts said this is what we want to do. But because we didn't have any coverage and guidelines for it being required, that's why it doesn't show up.
And that actually makes sense. I appreciate that. You know, and I made a comment earlier about the SLO. Sorry, I'm kind of going back with the SLO. That simplified version has really been, it's created some good conversation, at least in and amongst them within my district. It is forcing, I use that word very carefully, the educators to really think about how they're monitoring, progress monitoring, without having to rely on pre-test, post-test data. And I think it's really, all that should have been there anyways on a traditional SLO. And I've been saying that to them. I think this is allowing them to actually understand that. But even more so, I think it's been empowering the principals to be able to know what they're looking for, so they don't have to wait on some ambiguous pre-test, post-test data to be able to say, look, I'm looking for this progress. So it's, I'll be honest with you, I kind of like it better than the traditional SLO anyways. So I almost wish we could just keep it that way.
Well, you know us, Daniel, that's feedback we're going to be asking for. So, and you are so good at giving us specific feedback. So that's good to hear. And it's hard to do at scale in a big district. So I'm glad to hear that that's working out, because getting a big group of people to do something different is also difficult.
Well, and we were kind of ahead of the curve on SLOs, and it might be just a local thing with Richland One, because we started out right away first year with SLOs, and you've already indicated on some of the trainings at the time, the direction was authenticity, reliability, validity, and those sort of things. And so they sort of kind of got conditioned to look for those sort of things. So now it's a little bit of a mind shift about that teacher ownership, that progress monitoring, teacher-led self goals. And I've been kind of pushing that through. So this is really bringing it full circle for them. So it kind of fit nice. The timing was really good. If anything come good out of COVID.